Hello everyone, good evening. Good evening, can you hear me? Please, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Good evening, sir.
Uh, Good evening, welcome to class. Thank you everyone for joining. I noticed class is quite scanty, so let me try and see if I can still reach out to the group. Uh, so just give me a minute. So please, I would need some of your assistance. Right, please kindly do well to reach out to your co-mentees, post the links in your group. Just let people remember that we are about starting class now. All right, so welcome to class, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Akimbadi and Opemiko. Akimbadi and Opemiko. Sorry, I was just checking through my phone for updates. So welcome to week 5 of the JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship Program under the Intellectual Property course. Under the Intellectual Property course. And in today's class, we'll be discussing TKs, GIs, and GRs. TKs being traditional knowledge, GIs being geographic indicators, and GRs being meaning genetic resources. I'm sure we are going to have an exciting time in class. Please just kindly give us a few minutes. Our mentors will be joining us soon, right? They'll be joining us soon, but while we wait for them to join us, I will just go ahead I'll just go ahead and introduce them. Right. So in the session, we are expecting first Mr. Sand Mbakali. We are expecting Mr. Sand Mbakali. Okay, I'm sure we are a bit familiar with him. He has been one of our mentors in the session or in this brand of our classes under intellectual property. Next, we'll be having Mr. Max Ikombe. Mr. Max Ikombe, the founder slash principal at Everlaw Assets. He works extensively in the field of arbitration, ICT slash technology law, and intellectual property. Max is a facilitator on the annual Information Technology and the law course of the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies since 2016. He has trained in advanced intellectual property law courses at the World Intellectual Property Organization Academy, and he is an accredited agent of the Nigerian Trademark and Patents Registry and has conducted registration there since 2010. Right, and last but not least, sorry, I think my screen. I'm missing out on a mentor. All right, so last but not least, sorry, I had to just kindly try to open his flyer. Last but not least, we'll be having Mr. Folarin Aliko. All right, we hope that he'll be able to join us soon. I can see that little by little we're already joining in on the call. Thank you so much, Mr. Max, for joining in. We are happy to have you in the session this evening. In today's class, we'll be discussing traditional knowledge, geographic indications, and genetic resources. Thank you so much, sir. You're welcome to the session. So sorry, sir, for the scantiness of class. We are trying to get more of our mentees on the call. All right. So while we try to do that and make sure that we have everyone in class, please, we just like to have maybe you seeing that the class is being recorded. Maybe in the next 20 minutes, just help us run through your introduction into the session, sir. You're welcome, Mr. Max.
So, sorry, Dennis, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry, you were not audible for a minute.
Okay. Do you want us to give, say, maybe another 5 minutes for more people to join?
All right, sir, that's fine. We'll try to reach out to
Okay.
as many people as possible so that we can
Yes.
have more.
It's understandable. It's a holiday, so I'm sure most people would need some reminding. So I think it's fair if we give another 5 minutes.
All right, sir, that's fine.
So we'll start by 6:40. So
No
I'll be
problem,
on
sir.
standby to start by 6:40. Yes.
Noted, sir. Okay, thank you to everyone who just joined in. So we'll be starting class by 6:40. We want to just get more people to join in for the session, seeing that the class is a bit scanty. Right, so please let's just hold on a bit, right, while we reach out to more people. All right, good evening, everyone. Um, we know that some people may still be finding it difficult joining because of network, but please, let's also try to reach out to as many people as we can of our other committees so that we can have them join the class. Right, we are starting right away. We had to give it a little time so that we can get more people to join in. Welcome to class once again. Like I earlier introduced, this is week 5 of the Gypsy Mentorship and Internship Program. And so far, we have gone through 4 weeks of just intense discussions around the IP space. We started with discussing intellectual property for business, right? And then we moved on to intellectual property for creatives and inventors. And then we discussed IP infringement and enforcement. Last week, we talked about sports business and law. And in this class, we'll be discussing traditional knowledge, geographic indications and genetic resources, right? And one of our mentors is already here for the call. So please let's take today's class serious. For those who will be available for their group to present. Let's make sure to do that. If your presenter is not in class, do well to reach out to the person. And if we cannot lay hold on the presenter, please we would have volunteers from each group try to see how best they can make presentation on behalf of their team. Right. But please let's make sure to take as serious as possible this class. This is going to be technically, unofficially, the last class for the intellectual property course, right? So please like I said once again, let's do well to take advantage of the class while we can. So Mr. Max, um, back to you, sir. Thank you so much for being very early to class. Thank you. We really sincerely do appreciate. Our sincere apologies for the low turnout in class. We are sure that more people will join in as time continues and as they see our reminders. All right, but so that for the people who have already started joining in, we want to be able to still get the opportunity to listen to you, share with us in session what you have planned for yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, Dennis. Confirm you can hear me clearly. My background is a little noisy.
Yes, sir, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you very much. And let me, of course, start by commending the Gypsy team and, of course, all the mentees who joined today. I know it's a holiday, so most people are resting. So I know it's not easy to get people out to join a class on such a day, but I thank everyone who has joined. At least I've had the opportunity of previewing some of the presentations from the groups, and I think it's a great job has been done. Now, just like Dennis mentioned, I want to emphasize that the topic we are looking at today is a topic that I think for us Africans is critically important, but very unfortunately overlooked and not something we are taking as serious as we ought to. Once we understand that IP is principally a tool for national and economic development, we would see that the topics we are talking about today, traditional knowledge, which of course by extension would also cover traditional cultural expressions, geographic indications, and genetic resources, would be for us in Africa some of the most important parts of IP in terms of contribution to national and economic development of Africa. And as I carry on, I'm sure we'll begin to see and understand why I say that. I mean, every type of IP can necessarily contribute to national development and economic development. But what we need to understand is that different parts of the world have the areas where they have a comparative or a competitive advantage. And we need to understand that on the international scene, IP itself is somewhat of a zero-sum game. What I mean by that is that it's somewhat of a game where, as one party makes a gain, the other party might be making a loss. And let me explain what I mean by that. We already understand from your own unique creation, inventions, expressions, and all of that. So what that means is that IP, in that sense, is essentially acting as an exclusionary mechanism. You are trying to exclude others from taking economic benefit of your own work. So you can see that on the international scene, it would therefore mean that the countries who have advantages or who are able to create in certain areas more than others would benefit from IP to the detriment of the others. Because if, simple example, for instance, if Nigeria is, for instance, good in inventing, say, unique flavoring, just to use that as an example, and we are able to get a strong international regime to protect, say, by patent, for instance, what it would mean is that for any other country in the world to benefit from that unique creation made by Nigerians, the companies or enterprises in that country would have to license the right from the Nigerian producer. So you can see that by doing that, essentially foreign exchange is flowing from that country into Nigeria. So I hope you can see from that broad picture how IP can be a tool, that benefits one economy or one nation as against another nation. So when we look at the different types of IP, which I'm sure you are all familiar with now, copyright, trademark, patents, and industrial designs, which are the typically what we call the traditional intellectual property types, and we just call them traditional just because they are some of the IP aspects that have the longest protection. For instance, in a jurisdiction like Nigeria, those are the only 4 IP types that have their own, have a law specifically protecting them. Some of the other IP types we're talking about today, you will notice that they necessarily do not have a specific law protecting them. So, for instance, traditional knowledge, geographical indications, we do not yet have a specific law in Nigeria that protects them. So sometimes we refer to them more as the secondary IP types. But we can see that looking at the primary IP types, naturally, other nations in the world are ahead of us. So, I mean, if we start with a trademark, for instance, because most of those countries have, had longer, longer history of industrial production of goods and services. So it therefore means that the more there's a protection for trademark globally, the more brands, from those Western countries would benefit from it. So, for example, Coca-Cola is in Africa, and they benefit greatly from the protection that patent law and trademark law gives to them. So you can see that because of that, a lot of capital would move out of Africa to the US, the home country of the Coca-Cola brand. Same thing with patents, same thing with the others. But when we look at the subject of today, traditional knowledge, for instance, we all know that the continent currently in the world that has that is still mostly in touch with its traditional knowledge is really Africa. So it means, therefore, that if we are able to push as professionals for greater global protection for traditional knowledge, then Africa will benefit a lot from it. Of course, we are not saying other parts of the world also have their traditional knowledge, but we have so much that is unprotected, that is untapped. So, giving a simple example, for instance, of traditional cultural expressions, which is closely allied to traditional knowledge, So essentially, traditional cultural expression would just be, in a sense, like the traditional version of copyright. So it's about protecting the modes of expression of a community that has been preserved over a long time and moved from generation to generation. So it involves things, for instance, like the unique songs, unique stories told in that community and that have been handed down from one generation to the other. It will even include things like the ceremonial dances. It will include ceremonial or traditional outfits of that community. So using that as an example, one simple case study would see where Africa is losing so much because we have not prioritized protection of these aspects of IPs. The simple example of the Lion King and then Frozen. Of course, we know the Lion King, is a cartoon that is set around, the African jungle and a story that involves largely Africa. But unfortunately, the Africans who were involved in that, including the African communities whose traditional cultural expressions were used to make that movie, they didn't really get anything from making that movie. But on the other side, Frozen is a movie that was based in the around the Arctic area, the Scandinavian countries. But because that movie was based on some of their traditions, deer hunting and all of that, the producers of that movie had to pay a lot of money, both in terms of money and then in terms of certain opportunities given to those given to the communities around the area where that story was set, just for the right to use what essentially was their traditional cultural expression to make that movie. So with this, we can see that if Africa really puts protection of traditional cultural expression and traditional knowledge in the forefront, we stand to gain a lot. But unfortunately, we are not, as a continent, we have not done so well in doing that. And then my final thought would just be would also be another thought that would challenge us, which is in the area of geographical indications. So 2 or 3 years ago, yes, I think that was 3 years ago now in 2023, I did a little research, to just find out certain things. One of it, of course, and I'm sure by now, those of you who studied for this class, you'd know that one of the most popular geographical indications in the world is champagne. The sparkly, bubbly wine that we know comes from an area of France. So I did a research to find out in 2023, or I think 2022 now, sorry, what was the total revenue or income that France made from champagne as a brand. And what I saw, the figure was somewhere around $6 billion. Now I checked, Nigeria being an oil producing country, I checked what was the income or revenue Nigeria made from crude oil in the same period. And my research at the time showed that it was somewhere around the region of maybe 4.8, but certainly under $5 billion. So you can imagine that something that we look at as trifle as champagne is making more revenue for France as a nation than crude oil is making for Nigeria as a nation. So, of course, the question we'll ask ourselves is, how is France able to make all that money from champagne? The answer is simple. Because France prioritized the protection of geographical indications. So in the TRIPS agreement, for instance, France ensured that there was specific wording in that international agreement that protects spirits and wines. And that is why you cannot use the word champagne for anything without facing an objection from the champagne community that produces the champagne wine in France. So Apple, for instance, made an iPhone and called it, a gold-colored iPhone and called it champagne-colored iPhone, and they took up the matter immediately, raised an objection, and they did not allow Apple to get the trademark on that and force them not to use the word champagne. So you can see how effective protection of their geographical indication ensures that they are making so much revenue. Because you need to know that sparkly bubbly wine is not, it's not exclusive to champagne. Other regions in the world also produce the exact same sparkly bubbly wine that tastes almost the same with what is produced in France. But simply they cannot use the word champagne. Therefore, they cannot command the price that champagne can command. So you can see how strategically understanding what intellectual property benefits your nation and protecting it on the international scene can make such a huge difference. So I've just said these few words to just challenge us to understand that what we are discussing today is very important. It can be the game changer for Africa as a continent, and it is something that as young professionals we should begin to think about. I don't know if Mr. Sand, one of our mentors, is on the call. He's done a lot of work in that area. He spearheaded the development of a geographic indications law for Nigeria. Of course, the effort is still ongoing. That law has not been passed yet, but we hope it happens soon. So it just means that we all have to rise to the occasion and become more conscious of this area of intellectual property law in terms of advocacy and all to ensure that we help our continent get the most it can out of its natural resources. Of course, everything I've said goes to genetic resources as well. Lots of genetic resources in Africa, including a lot of the roots and herbs that we use for treatment and for wellness. If we are able to get proper protection for them, then it means Western countries cannot simply come here, take some of our extracts from our roots and herbs and use them to produce drugs without, adequate benefit coming to the African communities that have kept this knowledge and refined this knowledge over the millennia, passing it from generation to generation. So thanks everyone again. It's good to be in this class this evening, and I look forward to your presentations and the engagement and question and answers at the end. So thank you very much. And Dennis, with this, I hand over back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for your shared thoughts. In I think roughly about 17 minutes or 20 minutes thereabouts, you have taken us through with very, very practical terms, what geographic, what traditional knowledge, geographic indications, and genetic resources look like, right? It is resources that is particular to cultures and particular environments and locations that can be or should have or should be protected by intellectual property in order to be able to make profits off of it. Because the end products of intellectual property is that it is supposed to make money for the people or the persons who own it, right? So traditional knowledge, this topic is more around communal rights, right? And we hope that these are things that we are paying attention to. For those who took part and carried out research, I'm sure some of these things you found them very, very, very interesting. So far we have just Mr. Max on the call as our mentor. Okay, Mr. Sand said he would be unavailable, so sincere apologies for his absence. But what we'll be doing right now is that we'll be taking presentations from the mentees, right? And once we are done with the presentation, Mr. Marks will come back and we'll still just go deeper into the discussion. And as we go deeper, as he gives feedback to your presentation, and as we go deeper, and as we also ask questions and get answered to them, I am sure that quite a lot of clarity will come with the subject matter of today. Mr. Marks has already started the foundational work, right? We want to hear from you guys based off of the research you all conducted. What were your findings, right? What did you see in the light of the topic for today, TKs, GI, and GR? So please, our presenters for today, I'm not sure if we even have any of our presenters on call. I've been trying to see if I could find them, but unfortunately, so what I would do is, please, we still want to take presentation in class. So we would like to ask for volunteers from each group one and group two. We would like for us to have someone volunteer to take presentation on behalf of their group, right? So please, I want to employ us. If you are in group one, can you kindly indicate? I can help you share your slides and then we would run through your presentation. So please, group one members, can we have you so that we can take your presentation? Hello, are we with us? Can we hear us? All right. Tandun, right? Delegate Tandun, are you going to be helping us run through your presentation? You can just,
Yes, since my group members are not available, I can do that.
all right. So for which group? Is that group one or group two?
Group one.
All right. So thank you very much. Would you be needing help with me sharing your slides?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So please, while group one is getting ready for their presentation, group two, please let's try and see how best we can sort it out so that we take presentations. Thank you. Just give me a minute. So it's still just a minute. Let me get the presentation up. All right, so can you see my slides?
Yes, I can.
All right, so please just let me know when you want to move to the next screen.
All right. Thank you very much. So our topic for group one was geographical indications, traditional cultural expressions, traditional knowledge, as well as genetic resources. So this topic basically borders on basically the cultures and traditions of a particular community, or certain practices which are unique to a particular culture. They encompass our values, our practices, such as maybe our folklores, music that are unique to a particular community, as well as stories that are unique to a particular community. Thank you very much. Please, can you move to the next? All right. According to Article 22, Sub 1 of the TRIPS Agreement, geographical indications can be defined as indicators which identify a good as originating in the territory of a member region or locality in that territory, where a given quality, reputation, or other characteristics of the good is attributable to its geographical region. Examples are Ankara and shea butter from Nigeria, the Italian Parmigiani Reggiano cheese, as well as Indian basmati rice and sake from Japan. Please, can you move to the next slide? All right, these are the socioeconomic effects of geographical indications on local communities. The first one is income generation. So geographical indications create direct links between local producers and international markets. This gives products higher value, increase in demand, market expansions, and competitive advantage. The next one is employment opportunities. Due to international recognition, demand increases. Increase in demand would naturally lead to an increase in supply, which will further lead to increase in manpower. The next point is tourism expansion. Geographical indication products attract tourists seeking regional experiences. And the next one is cultural preservation. So GIs legally protect production methods, cultural knowledge. Some products are linked to age-old traditions, and therefore the need for preservation arises. And the next point is reputation linked to a specific region. And the next point is it prevents cultural erosion. So the sum total of what we are saying under the socioeconomic effect of GIs on local communities is that it leads to income generation, which is that when these GI, due to the reputation of these GIs, when they are sold, it can lead to generation of income for the community, can also lead to expansion of employment opportunities to the youth of a particular community or a particular locality, where, for example, the production of these products, where there's an increase in the demand for this product, there will be an increase in supply, and therefore there will be job opportunities for the youth to produce these products, as well as cultural preservation. One of the main, for example, for GIs also the socioeconomic effect of GIs is that it helps in cultural preservation. That is, a particular culture will be preserved rather than being erased over time. Please, can you move to the next slide? Protection of traditional knowledge, legal frameworks, and mechanisms for safeguarding knowledge. Traditional knowledge, which can also be known as traditional cultural expressions, is protected. In fact, let's start by what it refers to. So it refers to the skills, innovations, and practices developed and sustained by indigenous communities over generations, deeply embedded in cultural expressions, medicinal practices, and agricultural systems. It is often vulnerable to misappropriation, that is biopiracy, for example, fake Adair fabrics by Chinese companies. So first of all, I would like to point out that traditional knowledge can also be known as traditional cultural expressions, and under the Nigerian legal framework, it is protected under the Copyright Act of 2022. Please, can you move to the next slide? Intellectual property laws, legal frameworks and mechanisms for safeguarding indigenous knowledge or traditional cultural expressions include the intellectual property laws such as copyright, patents, and trademarks, national biodiversity and conservation laws. These laws controls access to biological resources associated with traditional knowledge, international commitments, conventions on biological diversity, CBD, Nayoga Protocol, Japan 2010. Some mechanisms include documentation and databases, community protocols, access and benefit sharing, agreements, as well as sui generis or unique systems. Please, can you move to the next one? Right. Cultural appropriation and traditional cultural expressions. So the key issues here are individual versus collective rights, requirement of fixation and originality, economic exploitations without benefit sharing, digitalization, vulnerability, and lack of specific legislation. So I'll start by saying that due to the development of technology, or due to technological development, as well as the advent of the technological era, it has become more common for cultural practices to be put out there on the internet, and therefore, it is now seen by people from different parts of the world, therefore making cultural appropriation very rampant. This has increased the incident of cultural appropriation. Appropriation can exist in various forms. There can be appropriation of what's it called, music, appropriation of cultural practices, and the rest. Some examples of cultural appropriations include Nike Air Force One Puerto Rico sneakers adorned with mola patterns originating in the Gona culture of Panama. The Maori hakaka mate is frequently used by New Zealand and international companies for commercial gain without permission from the Ngati-Toa Iwi tribe. In 2015, the KTZ brand copied a traditional Inuit parka design into a men's sweater. Following protests, KTZ stopped offering the sweater for sale. And then furthermore, Olorumbi and the Iroko tree commercialization. Please, can you move to the next slide? So the implications of misappropriation on cultural heritage and identity. The first one is variations in cultural traditions. Cultures can be twisted for commercialization and marketing, deviating from its true meaning, tarnished reputation due to fake products, loss of income, cultural erosion. Another implication or disadvantage of cultural misappropriation is that it leads to the enforcement of negative stereotypes, which can be associated with a particular culture. And it can also, just as it is stated, it can also lead to the tarnishment of the reputation of a particular group of people. It can lead to loss of income, because then low quality fakes will be produced across borders and everything, and most people will prefer to buy the cheaper version rather than getting the original version. And it can also lead to cultural erosion, and at some point it will get to a point where the particular goods can no longer be traced to a particular community, a particular locality. Please, can you move to the next slide? The attempts made to safeguard traditional cultural expressions. The first one is the Tunis model for protection of folklore for developing countries. The 1982 model provisions for national laws on the protection of expressions of folklore against illicit exploitation and other prejudicial actions. The 1996 WIPO Performances and Phonograms Treaty, which was adopted and enforced in 2002, a sui generis system brought by the Republic of Panama and Kenya. Furthermore, bringing it down to the Nigerian legal landscape, the traditional cultural expressions are mainly protected and provided for under the Copyright Act. However, the Copyright Act places the ownership of traditional cultural expressions as well as traditional knowledge on the community, in the government. Yeah, in the government. And therefore, this has led to some issues in that any money that is generated from such, which this has brought some issues in that the enforcement of the rights of these traditional cultural expressions can sometimes only be enforced by the government. And this is because the rights are vested in the government, the right to the enjoyment of any benefit from these traditional cultural expressions as well as traditional knowledge. Please, can you swipe to the next point? All right, thank you very much. We've come to the end of this presentation. So I would like to say that it is very important for traditional cultural expressions as well as traditional knowledge to be preserved. And this is because, as it is stated in the document, as it's stated in our presentation, this can lead to generation of employment opportunities as well as income and preservation of culture. However, some reforms and recommendations have been made by various scholars, especially for the Nigerian legal landscape, which is that a sui generis or a unique system of documentation should be implemented in Nigeria so as to ensure that traditional cultural expressions are properly provided for and protected, as well as and also another recommendation that has been made is for what's it called, for ownership to be vested in the community so as to ensure enjoyment of the rights and opportunities which are gotten from these traditional cultures to be enjoyed by the community and the members of the locality. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Andy, for helping us run through your presentation. We sincerely appreciate you stepping up to do that on behalf of your group. So we are supposed to move to group 2, right? So please, if we have someone from group 2 that can help run the presentation on behalf of group 2, you can kindly indicate. I will do well to share your slides while we take your presentation. Do we have anyone from group 2 on the call?
Sorry, I'm here on the call, but like I've not yet really prepared for the presentation. Yeah.
No worries, Mary. We can just run through your slides and you can just share anything that you can while you run through your slides. I'm sure Mr. Max can maybe try to just overall give more clarity to anything that you might share. Is that fine?
Okay.
So let me draw up your slide. All right, so sorry, your slides are up. Let's quickly try and see how best we can run through it in 10 minutes. Thank you, Mary.
Biospectrum and genetic resources. Yeah. Move to the next one. The increasing global demand for biological resources has brought significant attention to the ethical issues surrounding access to indigenous genetic resources. Two key concepts in this discourse are biospectrum and biopiracy. Biospectrum refers to the exploration of natural resources for valuable genetic and biochemical compounds, particularly for use in medicine, agriculture, and biotechnology. While it has contributed immensely to scientific advancement, it often leads to concerns when commercial entities seek to secure intellectual property rights over resources and knowledge that originate from indigenous communities. In contrast, biospiracy involves the unauthorized appropriation of indigenous knowledge and genetic resources, typically through patent or exclusive rights, without proper compensation or acknowledgement. This practice raises serious ethical concerns, particularly regarding exploitation, inequity, and cultural injustice. These ethical challenges arise when indigenous com- communities who have preserved and utilized these resources for generations are excluded from the benefits and derived from their use. This often results in economic, cultural, and social harm to these communities. The next slide, please. Yeah. Ethical concerns in addressing indigenous genetic resources, biopiracy and exploitation. Biopiracy represents one of the most significant ethical concerns when corporations or researchers patent indigenous plants or traditional medicines without consent. Its loss of control over traditional resources, economic exclusion of indigenous communities, increased cost of restricted access to resources for native users. In some cases, communities can are even prohibited from using resources they have relied on for generations due to intellectual property restrictions. Lack of informed consent. A major ethical issue in the absence of informed consent. Indigenous communities are often not fully informed about the purpose of research, unaware of the commercial value of their knowledge, excluded from decision making processes. This lack of transparency undermines their autonomy and rights. Cultural and economic harm. Commercialization of genetic resources without fair compensation can disrupt traditional lifestyle, undermine cultural heritage, create economic inequality. For instance, increased global demand for a medicinal plant may make it unaffordable or scarce for the indigenous people who originally used it. Please, the next slide. Free, parallel, and informed consent. Meaning and importance. Free, parallel, and informed consent (FPIC) is a principle that ensures indigenous communities have right to be adequately informed about proposed activities, participate in decision-making processes, approve or reject projects affecting their resources. FPIC promotes self-determination, transparency, and respect for indigenous rights. Key elements of FPIC: free, no coercion. Sorry, I think my slide. I think my network is bad here.
We can hear you just fine.
Yes?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Yeah, like I was not seeing the screen, but now I'm seeing it. Free, no coercion or manipulation, para, consent obtained before any activity begins, informed, full disclosure of intentions and impacts, consent, the right to approve or reject, limitations and criticisms. Despite its importance, FPIC faces challenges. Some legal frameworks require only consultation, not consent. Government may override community decisions, weak enforcement mechanism. This limits the effectiveness of FPIC in truly protecting indigenous interests. Please, the next slide. Fairness in research and commercialization. A benefit sharing framework. The Convention on Biological Diversity and the Nagoya Protocol establish guidelines for fair and equitable share of benefits arising from resources. This framework promotes para informed consent, PIC, mutually agreed terms, MAT, equitable benefit sharing. Assets and benefit sharing mechanisms. The Assets and Benefit Sharing Clearing House enhances transparency in transactions, legal certainty, monitoring of resources utilization. Benefits to indigenous communities may include financial compensation, technology transfer, community development initiatives. See challenges in implementation. Despite this framework, several issues persist. Weak enforcement in developing countries, lack of awareness among indigenous communities. The next slide, please. Role of traditional ecological knowledge. Meaning of TEK, tech. Traditional ecological knowledge refers to the knowledge, practices, and beliefs developed indigenous communities through long-term interactions with their environment. Contribution to conversation. Tech supports biodiversity conversations through sustainable resource management, protection of species and habitats, ecosystem monitoring, promotion of environmental sustainability. Please, the next slide. Role in climate change adaptation. Tech enhances resilience through resilient agriculture, disaster prediction and management, water conservation techniques, strengthening food security systems. Case studies: Australia indigenous fire management techniques reduce wildfires, Amazon agroforestry practices promote sustainability, Arctic Inuit knowledge aids climate research. India sacred groves preserves biodiversity. Legal frameworks governing bioprospecting. A. International frameworks. Convention of Biological Diversity focuses on conservation, sustainable use, and benefit sharing. Nagoya Protocol regulates access to genetic resources and ensures fair benefit sharing. National frameworks. Countries implement domestic laws to regulate access to genetic resources, benefit sharing agreements, protection of traditional knowledge. Nigeria's biodiversity policies aim to promote conservation and equitable use of resources. Please, the next slide. Roles of indigenous communities. Indigenous communities are key stakeholders because they preserve genetics resources, they hold valuable traditional knowledge, they contribute to sustainable practices. Their involvement ensures ethical and sustainable biospectrum. Case study: Huda, Hudia, Hudia plants. San people. The San people of South Africa traditionally used the Hoodia plant as an appetite suppressant. A pharmaceutical company patented it without compensation following negotiation. Benefit sharing arrangements were established, highlighting the importance of ethical compliance. Conclusion: ethical issues in assessing indigenous genetic resources revolve around biopiracy, exploitation, and lack of informed consent. While biospectrum has contributed to scientific and medical advancements, it must be conducted responsibly. Frameworks such as the CBD and Nagoya Protocol provide a foundation for fairness, but challenges remain in enforcement and implementation. The principle of FPIC is essential in ensuring the indigenous communities are respected and actively involved in decisions affecting their resources. Ultimately, integrating traditional ecological knowledge with modern science and ensuring equitable benefit sharing will promote sustainable development, protect indigenous rights, and foster global ethical standards in the use of genetic resources. Thank you. That's all.
All right, thank you very much, Mary, for helping us run through your presentation. We understand that it was quite impromptu, but thank you all the same for stepping up. So well done to both teams and to everyone who had a hand in putting up the presentation. Mr. Max, so I don't know if you have any other comments to make besides what you earlier said, based off of the presentation, and also maybe any other thing that you would like to build upon as regards the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Let me commend both teams. I think I looked at your slides and I thought you did quite a deep dive into the respective subjects. Just that for group 2, I believe the presentation on genetic resources, I don't know if I heard you use as case study the Niprisan case. That's the drug, the sickle cell drug created by a collabo between the Nigerian Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development and a foreign company. Yes, so there were a couple of issues back and forth about that, but ultimately a benefit sharing agreement was reached. So it's a very interesting case because a pharmacist came across I think it was a reverend father who over time had been in a community somewhere in the southwest and understood a traditional method to get some extracts from I think it's called guinea grass, a type of plant found commonly in a lot of parts of Nigeria. And somehow through that extract, they're able to refine it and created a drug for sickle cell. Sadly, the story didn't end too well. At the point in time, then the Olusegun Obasanjo presidency made funding available. There was an aggressive push. The drug was patented both in Nigeria and in the US. And then on the back of that, an agreement was entered into with a foreign pharmaceutical company and entered into a joint venture. They set up a factory somewhere in the FCT, and it went well for a while, but unfortunately, on the corporate side, things fell apart, and unfortunately, the last I know about it, that company was ultimately wound up. So it's quite a sad story, but also inspiring in the sense that we see a live example of the Nagoya Protocol in action, where before the patent was registered in the US, they insisted that the applicants had to bring evidence of a benefit sharing agreement they had entered into with the indigenous communities in Nigeria, where the knowledge for that particular extract that made up the active pharmaceutical ingredient for that drug was gotten. So, but overall, I was happy with your presentation, Group 2. You touched quite a number of very important things: the Nagoya Protocol, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and then, of course, the international efforts to stop biopiracy. Biopiracy actually is a significant issue because it can, like you mentioned in your presentation, it can get so bad where the biopirate, that's the person who comes to get the extract from your own locality, can go back, get a patent, and then based on the patent, even prevent the community themselves from using those extracts anymore, based on the monopoly right given in the patent. So it's one of the areas, of course, that we are rich in these genetic resources in Africa, but unfortunately we are not rich in protecting them. We are not very knowledgeable about how to protect them. So sometimes it's simple. These biopirates come disguised as they are just here as tourists, or they are just here to just observe the natural environment and all of that. So you see a lot of these tourists to come to Africa and all, because they are not just tourists, because nobody's going to leave the comfort of New York or of Paris and then come to live somewhere in the hinterlands and suffer the inconvenience of mosquito bite, malaria, and all of that just for tourism's sake. More often than not, a lot of them are not there just for tourism's sake. They are there actually to help, get these extracts across to their handlers back in Europe, who will be the ones to now do the investigations, find an active pharmaceutical ingredient, and then quietly sometimes even take those plants or roots, transplant them somewhere else where it works, and even without the community knowing, they are getting benefits, and the community is not getting anything in return. So yes, so the advocacy against biopiracy is very important. Then for Group 1, I also commend you. It's also quite, your presentation was quite incisive on the topic. And I think it was very important that you pointed out some of the areas where successfully indigenous communities were able to challenge misappropriation of their traditional cultural expression. So, of course, we have a lot of popular examples. So, more often than not, sometimes with this, it's even social media advocacy that gets the job done, where there's enough pressure from the community to say, look, this particular product you are selling appropriates our traditional cultural expression, and yet without any proper permission. Sometimes that is actually what works. There's one of those kind of cases I was working on, a show based on one of the indigenous communities in Nigeria that was being produced and was being produced by South Africans, was being aired on DSTV at the time, and there was zero engagement with the traditional community itself. So we, on behalf of the traditional Council of Chiefs, wrote to the producers, and they quickly admitted they came and they entered some sort of agreement. So part of the agreement was that, okay, some of the employment to be given to people from that locality, the studio hands and all of that, and then they ensured them, most importantly, because why this thing is important is that you allow people to appropriate your customs, they will go there and paint another picture about your customs. So in fact, one of the major issues we had to fight them about was that they painted a picture that particular culture was very tolerant, of adultery, in that custom. So that was one thing that, in fact, the Council of Chiefs said their own problem was not even about getting money. It was that they did not want the negative image to be painted about their culture. So this tells us why these things are very important. Of course, those of us who grew up watching Hollywood movies, there's a way Hollywood painted it that every Eastern European person is the bad guy, and then the American guy is the good guy who now ends up at the end of the movie, overcoming the threat from the Eastern European terrorists, of course, Russia being a huge chunk of that. So you can see how by misappropriating people's culture, you can paint a negative impression about them. So again, I commend both groups for your incisive research. And I want to encourage you guys beyond this research, go ahead, do more research in this area, write articles about them, get into the, for those of you who would get into advocacy, we need a lot of advocacy for Africa in these areas. So thank you, Dennis. Back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Marks, for just commenting on the presentation and also sharing more insights, highlighting some of the areas where they did well and very key aspects, highlighting more stories to just overall show the implication of misappropriating and also how communities can do well to ensure that their cultural traditional knowledges and their genetic resources are well preserved. So thank you so much, Mr. Max. All right. Well, we will not be too long in class today. All right. So we would like to take questions. Mr. Max has helped us run through an introductory. We've gone through the presentation. Through an introduction, we've run through presentation and we got some feedback from Mr. Max. So if there are questions in the session, please, I would like to ask us to ask. Please, this is the last class we'll be having, like I mentioned, for the IP space. So even if your question may not necessarily be related to this particular session, but overall under intellectual property, you have a question you would like to ask, I would encourage us to take advantage of the opportunity that we have now, right, to do so. So if you have a question, kindly raise your hand, indicate by raise of hand, or you can send your question into the chat box. Do we have questions? Okay, so while we're waiting for the mentees to ask questions, I want to ask, sir, maybe not just from an intellectual property standpoint of view, but more from a business standpoint of view, how do you think communities now can begin to market and package some of their knowledge in order to be able to get some of the visibility that they need to not just protect but to sell, right? Because the end game or the end goal is that I believe the end goal or the end game rather should be that the community is making some profits of the knowledge that they have. I know some communities can be very traditional and they do not want to share what they have, the knowledge they have with outsiders. But for those who may be willing to do that, for the case of advocacy, for us students who may want to, who may know of some communities that are doing certain unique things, and we want to push them to get them to begin to market their some of these their traditional knowledge, their genetic resources, their geographic indications. How do you think should be the best approach for effective marketing of their products so that eventually profits can begin to come out from it?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Dennis. It's an important question, but of course, the first place it starts from really is about education. So the challenge we have in Africa is that communities have not been educated to know that what they have is actually valuable. And without that, without that knowledge and understanding on their own part, it is very easy that any fraud, that anybody that comes along can, either simply take what is their unique, what is their own unique intellectual property in that sense and use it without their knowledge. So typically the first thing is about, knowledge, helping the community to recognize that what you have is actually valuable. And then of course, another part of advocacy, of course, is to actually do, some policing or monitoring. So if you see something that relates to a particular community and you think the community is not carried along, then it behoves on us as professionals to write to the community, let them know this is what I've noticed, what this program or that program it talks about. It uses some of your unique traditional cultural elements? Are you aware? Are you in control of the process? Have you been able to reach an agreement with them? Now, having said that, however, one of the challenges we have, in Africa with protecting particularly traditional knowledge is that traditional knowledge in most places is held as a secret. So if you go to many places, for instance, most of the traditional medical healers, for instance, they'll tell you that this is a knowledge passed from the father to the son, and they're not willing to let anyone else into that knowledge. So you find a situation where, because of that secrecy and that belief that the protection necessary is the secrecy, the community themselves do not want to expose or put it out there in the market. But the good thing is that recently, NAFDAC has done a lot of work, so there's a full regimen now, including full regulatory guideline for traditional and medical herbs and treatments. So because of that, is causing more of this traditional knowledge to become formalized and properly documented. Because part of the challenge we have is, if it is not even documented, then you cannot use it as a tool, for instance, to resist the registration of a patent that is based off of that traditional knowledge without documentation being there in the first place. So so first and foremost, what I'll say is that it starts with your own community. As an IP person who is aware of this now, if you see any of your community's traditional knowledge or traditional cultural acquisition being misappropriated, then you should even take the bull by the horn to get back to your traditional rulers to try to draw their attention and educate them on why it is important that this appropriation is not allowed to go unchecked. Because actually they don't want the money. If nothing else, you just want to ensure that you are controlling the narrative as it concerns your own customer. And then more importantly, is to also now let them know that even if they themselves are not necessarily using it, then you should control the right to license and prevent others from using it, except they have signed the beneficiary agreement with your community or some sort of arrangement or agreement. Like I said, sometimes the beneficiary is not about money; it's about opportunities for your people. It's about even acknowledgement alone that this product comes from the traditional knowledge, of so and so community in so and so place. That sometimes, even apart from money, can be valuable benefit for the community. So education is the first thing I would say. We need to, be out there educating communities on what they are losing by shutting their eyes to these opportunities. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your very detailed shared thoughts in class. Like we mentioned, like I think I mentioned in the first class, what you will be getting from this particular course is not just theoretical definitions to things, right? The essence for you doing your research is to get the theoretical definition part to it. But what we try to do in class is to ensure that our professionals, people like Mr. Marx, who has decades of or a decade plus of experience within the intellectual property space, comes and gives you practical exposure to some of these things. So on one hand, while you do the research and you conduct your personal research, you get definitions, you get basic understanding. Our mentors come and they do justice to giving you practical sides to the subject matters we are discussing. So I want to encourage all of us, right? Please take advantage of the fact that you still have access to our sessions. You can revisit the sessions on YouTube, watch and watch again. I'm sure that over the course of you revisiting them, you will find one or two very useful things that will give you the elevation and push you need in your IP journey, right? And once again, we want to encourage you to connect with the mentors that you have gained the opportunity to meet, right, in classes, right? Our mentors are very key stakeholders, not just as it comes to professionals in just their field, but nationally, right? Some of them hold very, very key areas of positions where they are contributing to the body of work. So you can reach out to them, find out what they are doing, see how best you can contribute to their own body of work, in some way you are shining the spotlights on them, but also on yourself. You are getting experience, you are getting networking, right? So please take advantage of the fact that you have a community where you have met mentors, you can connect with them, you can introduce them as someone, you can introduce yourself as someone who has taken part in this program. And I'm sure, like Mr. Max, I know Mr. Max is very, very willing and open to help out, right? You do have if you do come to him with under the grounds that you took part in this particular program. So once again, that's just the encouragement I want to give us while we try to wrap up for class. I sincerely apologize for the noise in my background. Um, yeah, so just before we go, can we kindly turn on our videos? Let's quickly take pictures while we try to call it a day. So please, let's turn on our videos. Let's quickly take pictures. Please, can we have us do that? Thank you so much, Mr. Max. Mentees, let's turn on our videos. Thank you, Adeola. Can we have more people do that? We'll do that quickly in 1 minute and then we'll take our pictures and go. This for the IP class, this is the last time you'll be taking pictures. So let's try and make it memorable. All right, thank you, Adeola. Can we have others do that? If you're in a place where you have lighting and you can do that, let's have your video on. Okay, Paul, thank you very much.
All right, so
so I have taken our pictures. I will send them to the group. Please do not forget to share what you have learned in the session. Do not forget, like I said, to connect with our mentors, right? Let them see that you are taking this very serious, right? It's been 5 weeks of of knowledge-based practical learning experience where it is not just you coming to come to do your research, but you have mentors who are experts in the field and they will be giving guidance. They have given you guidance within the space of intellectual property. Yes, so with that, we've come to the end of today's class. Please do not forget to share what you have learned on your different social media platform and fill in the attendance, right? Fill in the attendance. The classes and the dynamics for classes will be changing as regards next week. So please kindly watch out for the group for the announcements that will be coming as pertaining week 6. Right. Good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Max, for making our time to be with us in the session. We look forward to see you in our other sessions and other events, that we will be hosting under the JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship Program. Thank you once again, sir. Good night, everyone, and bye-bye.